It was supposed to be just another hike in the forest for Adam. The towering trees and the cool breeze had always been a comforting escape from the chaos of everyday life. But today, the forest felt different. There was an unusual stillness in the air, as though the very woods were holding their breath. Adam had hiked these trails many times before, always marveling at the tranquil beauty of the wilderness. However, today, he had taken a wrong turn. His instincts told him he was far off the beaten path, but he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was wrong. The once familiar trail had become overgrown, and the dense canopy of trees above blocked out the sunlight, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. As Adam scrambled up a rocky incline, his foot caught on an uneven surface. He tumbled down the hill with a jarring thud, his body crashing painfully into the jagged rocks below. When he finally came to a stop, a sharp, unbearable pain shot through his leg, and he realized something was terribly wrong. His leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and he could see the jagged edges of broken bones piercing through his skin. Panic washed over him. His heart raced as he struggled to stay conscious. He looked around. His backpack was scattered across the forest floor, and his phone, which had been his lifeline in the past, had no signal. Alone in the wilderness, Adam realized that the night was fast approaching. There was no way he could make it out of the forest on his own. His breathing became shallow as fear gripped him. He tried to call for help, but his voice was swallowed by the vastness of the forest. It felt like the trees themselves were conspiring to keep him trapped. The pain was unbearable, but it was nothing compared to the sinking feeling in his chest. He was completely alone, miles away from the nearest trail, and no one knew where he was. Then he heard it, a deep growl. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. His thoughts immediately raced to the worst-case scenario. A bear? A mountain lion? His mind flooded with horror stories of hikers who had disappeared, never to be seen again. The growl came again, this time closer. Adam's breath caught in his throat as the shadows in front of him shifted. His eyes widened in disbelief as a massive wolf merged from the trees. Its dark fur blended seamlessly with the twilight of the forest, but its glowing yellow eyes pierced through the gloom. The wolf wasn't attacking, though. Instead, it simply watched him, its gaze unwavering. Frozen in place, Adam's heart pounded in his chest. He had heard stories of wolves attacking hikers, but this was different. The wolf didn't growl again. It didn't show any signs of aggression. Instead, it circled him cautiously, as though sizing him up. Its movements were graceful, almost deliberate, as it sniffed the air around him. Despite his fear, Adam couldn't take his eyes off the creature. The wolf's stare wasn't predatory. It was almost inquisitive. It was as though the animal was assessing him, understanding his pain, as if it recognized that he was not a threat. The wolf took a few steps closer, its muzzle brushing against Adam's injured leg. He held his breath, terrified that the wolf might attack. But instead of harming him, the wolf's touch was surprisingly gentle. It sniffed the wound with curiosity, then backed away slightly as though making a decision. What happened next was even more astonishing. The wolf didn't leave. It didn't attack. Instead, it turned and began trotting off into the forest, glancing back to make sure Adam was following. In that moment, something inside Adam clicked. Despite the excruciating pain in his leg, despite the overwhelming fear that gripped him, Adam found the strength to push himself up from the ground. He limped after the wolf, using the trees for support, each step agony. It felt like an eternity, and yet the wolf never looked back. It moved with a purpose, as though it knew exactly where it was going. Adam was unsure if the wolf was guiding him or if it was just leading him deeper into the woods, but something in his gut told him he had no choice but to follow. The night was closing in quickly, and every snap of a twig underfoot seemed to echo through the forest. The shadows grew longer, and the air grew colder. Adam's thoughts began to blur. His pain was almost too much to bear. Was he hallucinating? Was he imagining this wolf? Or was it real? As the hours passed, Adam's doubts began to fade. The wolf remained at his side, its sleek body moving through the forest with an almost ethereal grace. Despite his weakened state, Adam was compelled to follow, trusting the animal more than he could explain. Then, as the moonlight bathed the forest in a silvery glow, they arrived at a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood a cabin, an isolated retreat, far from the nearest trail. Adam couldn't believe his eyes. He had no memory of passing through any area like this. Had the wolf led him to safety, or was this just a strange coincidence? The wolf stopped in front of the cabin, turned to Adam, and without hesitation, scratched at the door. Adam hesitated for a moment, stunned by the sudden turn of events. Before he could gather his thoughts, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly man. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw Adam, battered and bleeding, standing on his doorstep. The man ushered Adam inside, his old hand surprisingly strong as he helped the injured hiker into a chair by the fire. As Adam collapsed in relief, the wolf silently slipped away into the woods, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The elderly man, who had lived alone in the cabin for years, explained that he had seen the wolf many times before. It wasn't an ordinary wolf, he told Adam. It was a guardian of the forest, a creature that had been protecting travelers and hikers for generations. The man spoke of stories passed down through the locals, tales of the guardian wolf that would appear in times of great need, leading the lost and the injured to safety. As Adam's wounds were treated and he began to recover, he realized that his life had been changed forever. The experience had not only saved him, but it had also opened his eyes to the untold mysteries of the natural world. He was no longer the same person who had entered those woods. To this day, Adam returns to the cabin every year. To honor the wolf that had saved him, he brings offerings of food, flowers, and keeps the memory of the creature alive. The wolf may never appear again, but Adam knows that somewhere in the woods, the silent guardian still watches over those who are lost. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.